guys, Otterpop here. I keep hearing your requests and your comments and stuff like, Oversimplified Second Punic War Part 3 is out. You should totally react to it. Don't worry, I will. It just sometimes takes me a little bit. I typically don't react to these or analyze or whatever right away. But I'm finally watching this. I Oversimplified. You're absolutely insane. I tell you what. I mean, you did the first Punic War in two-parters, and then the second Punic War in two-parters, but then, surprise, apparently there's a third part to it that had to get released like a year later. Not quite a year to the date, but pretty darn close. In any case, I'm actually going to be watching this. Again, I don't know too much about the Punic Wars, but this is why videos like this are so helpful, because it kind of teaches me about historical events and elements that I'm not familiar with, and I greatly appreciate that. Heck, even with stuff that I am familiar with, I still end up learning a bunch of new things, like especially with Oversimplified covering, like, you know, the American Civil War and the Revolutionary War and stuff like that. There was a bunch of extra additional information related to those conflicts that I didn't know about or didn't learn about. The American education system. Isn't it lovely? So before I decide to start this reaction, analysis, commentary, whatever kind of video it ends up being, I'd first like to give a huge thank you to my current patrons. They have supported me, you know, whether recently or for a long time. In any case, their support is greatly helpful to me as a content creator, especially given how little that I do make on YouTube nowadays, on account of having to separate my channels and stuff. But I still very greatly appreciate their support. You know, sometimes I do video requests for them or art commissions. Sometimes I give them behind the scenes information on video projects and art projects and stuff like that. There's a lot of cool benefits, so if you're interested in supporting, go ahead and check that out. Link is always going to be down in the description below, but thank you to the patrons who do currently support me. Your guys' support is amazing, and you're going to get essentially a very high quality reaction, analysis, commentary to this video, unlike pretty much the public for the most part. So let's go ahead and get into this, and let's make sure to shift the camera too before I forget. And yes, I do got some doggos in here. I got my doggo. She's there we go. How did I get the camera over there? Then I also have another bunt croissant who's back here. So I got some lovely company, and you know, they just got fed. They were just outside, so they're I'm not sure if they really. I don't really think they have energy. I think they are chill AF right now, and I'm okay with that. Anyways, let's go ahead and get started.
This video was made possible by NordVPN. Click the link in the description to get an exclusive
No more honey sponsorships, right?
Head over to the merch store to pick up some character pins, calendars, and
so much good merch.
To enact vengeance on your enemies, but always felt too shy? Well, fear not. Little Hannibal is here. Support our channel by heading over to oversimplified.youtube.com.
Oh, that's so cute.
And buying your
Itch. Okay, there we go.
Piece of vengeance. Our exclusive Hannibal
Pocket-sized piece of vengeance.
So get it quick.
Oh, that's cute as heck. Ooh, yay, we get a previously. This helps. Oh, yep. Hannibal and Scipio. Battle of Ticinus, several thousand Roman casualties. Hannibal versus Longus. Battle of Trebia. 20 to 30,000 Roman casualties. Hannibal versus Flaminius. Battle of the Lake. 30,000 Roman casualties. Pallas and Varro. Cannae. Battle of Cannae. 60 to 80k. Oh my gosh, it just, the number keeps increasing. So many casualties. Hannibal is something else.
How do you solve a problem like Hannibal? In a crisis such as this,
Yep.
the Romans often turn to religion. What's going on? Are the gods mad at us? The gods must be mad at us!
Yeah, that's not how that works.
Why? No, why? Two of the Vestal virgins broke their sacred oath and lost their virginity. That's why Hannibal's kicking our ass. What should we do with them? Appease the gods!
Sacrifice them.
Bury them alive!
Wow.
How did they even boink? It was those guys! Huh? What should we do with them? Beat them to death!
Also true story?
Needless to say, the Romans were freaking out.
Uh-huh.
Okay, now that that's out of our system, Let's go find a real solution. The real solution, first of all, involved raising a new army.
Yeah, real solution. I'm not sure if like that's how they actually thought of it. As let's maybe less of a let's think of a real solution and more of a we should act instead of reacting kind of thing. I don't know. I don't know if that's exactly what's happening, but it is kind of possible as to what's happening. But I mean, you kind of got to find a real solution because like sure you lost tens of thousands of soldiers in a practically impossible yet should have been assured win loss thing because these two particular women lost their virginity when they vowed chastity or something like that. I don't freaking know. Religion is an interesting thing. I don't particularly believe in that kind of stuff, being an atheist and all. But even I cannot understate how important religion has been across not just centuries, but thousands of years. Because remember, the Punic Wars are like BCE, you know, freaking before the AD period, but not the after death, before Jesus Christ and stuff like that. This is a few hundred years BCE, something like that. I can't exactly remember the exact dates. But even then, religion, mythology, that kind of stuff was incredibly important to various civilizations. It still is. I think it's the way it's used is different, although sometimes the way that religion is abused for personal gain or corruption or influence or wrongful influence and stuff like that, I feel like that's happened no matter what throughout history. Maybe just to different degrees and in different ways, but again, back to the original point, you cannot understate the importance of religion, even way back in this time period. So yeah, I guess religious aspects are gonna be used as the excuse, but yeah, it's time to find a real solution to the Hannibal problem. So what do you do?
Okay, now that that's out of our system, let's go find a real solution. The
Yep.
real solution, first of all, involved raising a new army. Remember, at Cannae, Hannibal had wiped out
Cannae.
the biggest army Rome had ever fielded.
Yep.
Possibly 20% of Rome's military-aged men. Rome needed to
Ouchie.
replace those losses. And
That's a
fast,
huge percentage.
Before Hannibal arrived at their gates. But where
Yeah,
would those
Hannibal's heading for
replacements come
Rome.
from? Rome had a few ideas. Quick, lower the age of conscription.
Oh god.
You, put down those Digimons. You're a soldier.
I was about to say, that looked like a
Enlist all these
Gatomon.
slaves with the promise of freedom. And equip them with all these religious weapons and armor. Anything we've got. All right, men. You are Rome's last line of defense. Man the walls.
It's not gonna go well. Slaves would definitely be better
After
than
the
children.
earth-shattering defeat at Cannae, the Romans expected Hannibal to arrive at their gates any day now. In Hannibal's camp, the mood was triumphant. We did it! We won! So when do we
Again.
march on Rome? Today? I'm free in 10 minutes. Whoa, slow down. We're not going to Rome.
They're
We're
not?
staying right here. Are you an idiot, Hannibal? No, I'm smart. We don't need to
True.
march on Rome, because after what we did, the Romans are definitely going to surrender. Watch. Hey, Jim Bob. Yes, sir? Go to Rome
No.
to discuss peace terms. Yes, sir. Hey, I'm here to discuss peace terms. Piss off!
Nope.
They told me to piss off! What?
Mhm.
They didn't surrender?
Nope.
No! And they were mean!
No.
Hannibal was learning that Rome had an unprecedented attitude towards surrender. Even when Hannibal offered to ransom thousands of prisoners back to Rome, a pretty common practice in ancient warfare, the Romans refused, opting to let their
Damn.
own men be sold into slavery rather than paying a penny
Wow.
to the enemy. It was clear that in order to defeat Rome, you had to annihilate them. If any Roman man
true.
was still standing, you hadn't yet won. But still, Hannibal decided not to march on Rome, and it was a controversial decision. Even one of his own commanders famously told him, Hannibal, you know how to win a battle, but you do not know how to win a war. From Hannibal's perspective, perhaps he knew his army was designed to survive behind enemy lines and sow chaos. It may not have been well equipped to undertake a risky siege of one of the most fortified cities on Earth.
Yeah.
Plus, with many of the southern cities defecting to his side after Cannae, Hannibal likely thought things were going pretty well, as is. We'll stay the course. Okay, so the Romans didn't
200
surrender
BCE.
after 3 major defeats. But surely they'll surrender after 4.
Will they?
Unfortunately for Hannibal, however, after Cannae, the Romans well and truly learnt their lesson.
Did they?
Well, would you look at that? Remind me, who was it that said Hannibal was too dangerous to fight? You. And who said we shouldn't fight him directly? You. And who tried to fight him directly? Us. And what happened? We lost 20% of our military-aged men.
Yeah.
That's right. So tell me, when Hannibal approaches, what do? We run away. I'm a genius. Clap for me. After Cannae, Fabius Maximus kind of became the unofficial leader of Rome. Even if others were elected consul, his influence was unparalleled, and Rome quickly reverted to the Fabian strategy of avoiding Hannibal. They knew they couldn't defeat him, so instead, they hoped they could at least contain him. They raised an impressively large number of men, partly by enlisting teenagers, slaves, and criminals. And rather than trying to fight Hannibal, they instead turned their attention towards those treacherous southern cities that had switched sides. Thanks for joining the winning team, guys. Here's the deal. All you have to do is provide me some troops and defend your own city, since I'll be too busy to defend it for you. Now,
This is
I'm
gonna
going
work.
to briefly turn around, look this way, and when I look back, you better not be being massacred by the Romans. Oh, for goodness sake! The Romans spread out their newly formed legions and began attacking the southern cities here, there, everywhere. The southern cities expected to have Hannibal's protection, and Hannibal was inundated with requests for help. He was forced to run around southern Italy, trying to encourage defection while rescuing his own allies. But when he showed up, the Romans would often leave, only to come back the second he went away again. And as these southern cities found themselves being
Pretty
punished
smart.
severely by the Romans, they began to realize that joining Hannibal may not have been such a good idea. Hey! You think you're so big? Attacking my allies? Why don't you come out and face me? Because you're scary!
I mean, if you think about it, I can understand why Hannibal may not have wanted to move on Rome. Because that would have been quite a bit of distance to cover. Not like they haven't been doing it already, but Rome is also very heavily fortified, and Hannibal didn't really know. Probably, not for sure didn't, but probably did not know about how military reinforcements were being reinvigorated of sorts. Like Hannibal probably didn't know enough information about how the army was starting, like if they were even starting to like grow in size, and how, and like how, like just how in general, how fast and stuff like that. Hi baby, you're adorable. Can you come here? Can you sit? Good girl. No, look at my dog, she's so cute. Given what we know about the Punic Wars and how they ended up, at least from my perspective, how they ended up so far, I can understand why Hannibal not moving on Rome would have been a controversial decision, but we also don't necessarily know what would have happened if he hadn't moved on them. Or if he had moved in on them. Jeezums. I mean, it could have gone his way initially, and, the Romans wouldn't necessarily have had time to do quite this method. But at the same time, would Hannibal have been able to do much against a heavily fortified city like Rome? It definitely would have made the Romans panic, but there's no definitive answer as to if they would have lost. But I mean, as ridiculous as it sounds too, the strategy that the Romans did come up with in attacking all of these city-states and then running away when Hannibal and his army came, it's actually genius, because they can handle the city-states. It's just Hannibal and his army that seem unstoppable, so it's like, we gotta retake control, and we have to avoid him at all costs as often as possible, because if we're able to at least regain some amount of control, we can have a fight potentially on multiple fronts. We can essentially recover our allies, and come up with a different attack strategy that maybe pushes Hannibal's army from varying directions. I mean, I don't remember exactly what happened in some of the battles in the Second Punic War, in the second part, but it's certainly a better method than trying to take Hannibal on head on. Although eventually they are gonna have to take him head on, but who's gonna lead the charge on that? I mean, every general's lost so far. Like, either just lost the battle or heck, even lost their life, I think. I think a few have lost their lives. So, somebody else has got to lead. Somebody who's gonna have very different attack strategies from all the previous attempts. Was it 3 attempts? 4 attempts? Something like that.
Why don't you come out and face me?
No.
Because you're scary!
Especially with the eye
Southern
patch.
cities frequently switch sides depending on who appeared to be winning, and the whole situation became a nightmare for Hannibal to control, playing a constant game of Roman whack-a-mole to fend off the enemy armies. Having not long ago seemed near extinction, the Romans had managed to turn the situation around by placing Hannibal in a clever predicament.
Yep.
If he left southern Italy, the southern cities would likely capitulate to Rome, meaning he couldn't leave. And since the Romans wouldn't fight him, he couldn't inflict any more dangerous defeats. For now, Hannibal had been muzzled. Southern Italy had been his prize for his impressive Italian campaign. But those clever Romans found a way to take his prize and turn it into his prison. With the Fabian strategy neutralizing Hannibal for now, the Romans were freed
For
up
now.
to refocus their
That's
attention
it.
to other fronts. This whole time, while we've been discussing Hannibal and the Italian campaign of the Second Punic
There's
War,
another
fighting
campaign happening.
had actually been occurring elsewhere. For example, in 216 BC, the Romans had sent an army north to punish the Celtic tribes that had joined Hannibal. However, as the Romans entered the Latana forest, little did they know those clever Celts had set up a trap. The Celts dropped trees on them, decimating
Nice.
the Romans, and they even took the commander's head to use as a religious sippy cup.
Wow.
So that went pretty bad.
Damn.
Whoa, very bad.
Ooh,
But thankfully, in other
nasty.
theaters, things were going a bit better.
What about the
For
Carpathian
example, let's look
side
at
of things?
Sicily.
Sicily
After
too.
Cannae, internal chaos in Syracuse caused this longtime Roman ally to switch sides, because being a winner is more fun. The Carthaginians also landed
Carthaginian,
troops
not
hoping to
Carpathia,
retake their
Carthage.
next island, while Roman proconsul Claudius Marcellus moved in to besiege Syracuse. The siege was a brutal slug for the Romans, largely due to the presence of one famous scientist and mathematician, Archimedes. He lived in
Oh,
Syracuse at the time, and
Archimedes.
he invented a variety of clever contraptions to defend the city. There was a
Using the
giant
power of
clock that
math.
could grab and destroy Roman ships, and
Wow.
purportedly even a big mirror that could magically ignite them. The
What?
Carthaginian forces on the island attempted
I
to
mean,
come
that
to Syracuse's
light can work that
rescue,
way, but damn.
luckily for the Romans, they all got diarrhea and then
Ah.
died. Finally,
Oh.
in the city itself,
Dysentery.
the big annual religious festival came, and the Syracusans said,
Oh.
"Well, fellas, we've been holding off the Romans for over a year now. I think we've earned ourselves a little party." Sir, we're still under a massive siege. Are you sure? They'll probably take advantage of it.
Oh boy.
Carl, I'm taking advantage of the open bar. Sir, they've got battering rams.
Uh-oh.
Well, Carl, I'm ramming these hors d'oeuvres into my mouth. Sir, they'll tear down our walls. Well, Carl, I'm tearing it up on the dance floor. Sir, they're literally at the gates. Well, Carl, I'm literally at the cheese platter. Marcellus took advantage of the drunken festivities.
Damn, trying to
stormed the
celebrate
city,
Artemis
and
too, huh?
plundering ensued. In the chaos, Marcellus ordered Archimedes be captured alive. Some sources say Roman troops entered Archimedes' home, and they were like, "Hey man, are you the math guy? Go away, I'm drawing circles. Look, I just need to know if you're the nerd. Come on bro, get out of here, you're messing up my circles." Now is not a good time to draw circles. It's always a good time for circles. I love circles. Either stop drawing the circles or I kill you. I choose the circles. Despite not securing Archimedes, by 210 BC, the Romans did secure
Ouchie.
Sicily, and also put down a Carthage-supported rebellion on nearby Sardinia. 2 Roman successes,
Okay.
and more to come. After Cannae, King Philip V of Macedon
Holy
saw an
shnikes.
opportunity. He
Oh,
was
Macedonia,
concerned with
huh?
recent Roman expansion
Sorry,
into
Macedon.
Illyria. And so, when he saw Hannibal annihilating the Romans in Italy, he said, "Oh my gosh, hey! Hey, Hannibal! Oh my gosh, you're so cool! Let's form an alliance and annihilate the Romans together!"
Ooh.
Sure. Yes!
Wow.
Hoped to secure Philip's help in fighting Rome, but a Roman army was sent to the region, stirred up Philip's other Greek opponents, and essentially kept
Oh.
Philip bogged down in Greece for the
Ouchie.
entire
Oh,
duration of the
that
war.
stinks.
Another kind of Roman success. But the main front Rome was hoping to push Carthage back in was Spain. The riches of Spain made it one of
Yep.
Carthage's most valuable possessions, and the Romans were eager to weaken it.
That's
Remember
probably a
way
good
back at
idea.
the start of the war, the consul Scipio was supposed to go to Spain, but ended up rushing back to Italy when he realized Hannibal was crossing the Alps. He then faced Hannibal at Ticinus and had to be rescued by his son. Well, after he recovered from his wounds, he proceeded with the original plan and joined his brother in Spain. There, the two Scipio brothers fought a successful campaign against Hannibal's brother, Hasdrubal. Over the next few years, they won a number of key victories.
Ooh,
even
oh
taking
no.
Saguntum, the city that had kick-started this entire war.
Wow.
Yet more Roman success. A trend appeared to be emerging. Whenever the Romans fought
Is it gonna
anyone
hold?
other than Hannibal, they usually came out on top. Perhaps these other fronts would be the key to Rome taking back control of this war. Perhaps it was time for Rome to return to their old ways of being the aggressive go-getters. And perhaps it would help if Rome had a Hannibal of their own.
Scipio's son, right?
Scipio, the younger, was the son of Publius Scipio, currently fighting in Spain.
Yep.
This made him a member of one of Rome's most prestigious families. Not much is known of his childhood, although there is one story of how he was getting hot and heavy with a young lady, only to have his dad barge in and drag him out wearing nothing but a cloak. This story was written by a Roman poet to make Scipio look bad, but by modern standards has ended up making him look pretty rad. My guess is if Rome had a high school football team, Scipio would be the quarterback.
One of those types.
Scipio
Got it.
was only 18 when the Second Punic War broke out. He was at the Battle of Ticinus, where he famously rescued his father, and he was one of the survivors of the Battle of Cannae. Afterwards, he threatened to cut down any man.
I forgot about that. He survived Cannae.
He was a natural leader and up to his ears in spunk, and therefore he rose through the Roman ranks.
As long as he's not too arrogant.
We need a new military tribune, but Hannibal has killed so many men, we're running out of options. Put me in, coach. Scipio, you're only 20. You can't be a tribune. Come on, coach. Put me in. Well, you do have a lot of spunk. All right, you're hired. We need to elect a new Edile. Who do we have left? Put me in, coach. Scipio, you don't meet the minimum age requirement. I got this, coach. I got this. Well, okay then. You're in. Ugh, my room's a mess. I gotta cook dinner. Oh, and would you look at that? My fly's down. Life sucks. Put me in, coach. Wow, you're so spunky. When Scipio was 25, however,
What's with
he
the
received
spunk?
some bad news. His father and uncle in Spain had both been defeated in battle.
Ooh.
And shockingly, both of them were killed. The news must
Dead
have
and
been
also dead.
devastating for the young Scipio.
And his dad and his
But it
uncle.
was also devastating for Rome, as almost all of their Spanish gains were wiped away.
Yep.
Okay, listen up! We need someone to go and replace the Scipios in Spain. So, who's up for it?
Scipio.
Come on, who's gonna go? Fabius, Spain seems unwinnable. There's no glory to be had there. Yeah, the glory is here, defending the homeland from Hannibal. Well, somebody has to go.
Put me in, coach.
I said, well, somebody has to go. Put me in, coach!
Knew it. I knew he was gonna do it.
Be the one to go and replace his father and uncle in Spain. However, there was concern amongst the older senators. You're only 26. You can't lead a military campaign.
Watch him.
He's right. That's a good point. And you're 71. You can't stand up without a little urine dribbling down your leg.
Ooh.
Scipio didn't
Damn.
meet the typical requirements for the position, but as the only person willing to go, this young piece of hot Roman meat was unanimously elected
Hot
proconsul
Roman meat.
and sent to lead the Roman armies in Spain. He hoped to carry out a campaign as impressive as Hannibal's had been in Italy. In fact, Scipio rather admired the one-eyed general. Scipio, you've got a Hannibal poster in your room. Yes, but he's the enemy. I'll let you in on a secret, Billy. You know how we're gonna win this war? By marching straight
Thinking
ahead?
like Hannibal.
No,
Hannibal. Yeah.
that's the old way. We've gotta be less Roman and a little more Hannibal. Hey, by the way, don't just barge into my room. That's an infringement of my privacy. Privacy? Privacy, you say? Well, Scipio, if it's privacy you want,
Alright,
then
NordVPN,
you,
here
my
we go.
friend, need NordVPN. Don't touch me. How would you like to be innocently downloading
What?
inspirational photos of Nicolas Cage, only to realize it's malware stealing your data and telling all your friends you still sleep between your parents because of scowy dweems? Yeah, didn't think so. And that's why you need NordVPN.
Come
With a
here.
single click,
Come here, let me touch you.
NordVPN connects you to secure
You see?
servers around the world, keeping you safe
Good
from malware and
girl.
other online threats. Their Threat Protection Pro features go the extra mile in preventing your
Good
data being
girl.
stolen by scanning your downloads for malware,
Good
blocking
girl.
malicious websites,
He's my
and
good
even
girl.
detecting fake online
Baby.
shops. Dolceandbanana.com? I don't think so.
Oh,
But that's
baby
not all.
girl.
With NordVPN, you're not just
Alright.
protected. You can also unlock better deals in other regions and access content that isn't available in your country.
She doesn't
So
care
get
much as much for her
protected
chin
today
scritches,
by
honestly.
heading to nordvpn.com.
She likes the ear rubs.
And grab an exclusive deal
Oh yeah.
with 4 extra
Oh yeah, she
months
likes
for
that.
free. That's nordvpn.com/oversimplified. And as always, you'll be supporting my channel. So
Good
thank you.
girl. You know, there's nothing wrong with admiring your enemy. Like, admiring their capability, their strategy, anything. I mean, if you're dealing with a war that you're being badly beaten on, time and time again, I mean, unless you're just the shittiest army in the world, shittiest government in the world or something like that, you can admire your enemy and, like, the leading commander of the other side. There's nothing wrong with that. I mean, heck, you can by admiring them, that essentially puts them on the same level as you, and there's this sort of respect that kind of causes you to, I don't know, like, actually think about what's going on, what you're doing, what the potential plans are. Because if you try and act a little bit more like your enemy, if you try and think like your enemy, you could have a better chance of winning. Scipio is absolutely on the right track here. They need to think a little less Roman and a little more Hannibal right now. That's what they need in order to win this war. It's basically the same thing as just thinking outside the box. Sometimes you need to do that, whether for something simple like a daily chore that you're working on, or maybe you forgot where you put something, to something as big and complex as a frickin' War of Empires. Thinking outside of the box can sometimes save your ass. Never underestimate the potential of your enemy. Never do that. Last thing that you need to be is arrogant. Arrogance is gonna get you killed. You can't be overconfident too. This is why Scipio is probably gonna win this. He's thinking differently. He's thinking outside the box. He's showing honesty and integrity and respect in a way that allows him to potentially understand his enemy, to think like them, to potentially not just counteract them, but win. And that's probably what's gonna happen. It wouldn't surprise me. Oh, I mean, to be fair, we all pretty much know that Hannibal lost at the end. Just don't necessarily know the detail. Heck, I never even learned about I never learned about the Punic Wars. I didn't know. Like, I'd heard of Hannibal, but that was kind of about it.
Now,
Where were we?
Oh yeah. Hannibal contained a young piece of hot Roman meat sent to lead the Roman armies in Spain. Scipio was charismatic, extremely confident, bold, and probably most importantly of all, he thought differently from other Roman generals. So, Skippy, what's the plan? Don't call me that. We're Roman, so same thing as usual, right? We march straight at the enemy, right? Get this, Billy. No, we don't.
What?
Scipio was a real outside-the-box thinker. There were 3 main Carthaginian
What was I
armies
saying?
in Spain, 2 led by Hannibal's brothers, Hasdrubal and Mago, and another led by Hasdrubal Gisco. Most Roman generals might have looked at these armies and said, I just gotta, march straight at these guys and kick their ass and stuff. But not Scipio. At a time when many believed winning battles won wars, one of Scipio's greatest strengths was an ability to see the overall strategy behind his actions. He knew that Spain was the closest thing Hannibal had to a base of support. With
Mm-hmm.
its mass resources and manpower,
Yep.
it's where Hannibal likely hoped to get supplies and reinforcements from.
Mm-hmm.
Spain's base of support was the city of New Carthage, the most fortified city on the peninsula, perfectly positioned to communicate with and receive supplies from Africa. And so, if Scipio managed to take New Carthage, he could take Spain. And if
Cut
he
off
took
the
Spain,
supply lines.
then maybe Hannibal would fall. To Scipio, Spain wasn't just some sideshow. It was the main show. And it all rested on New Carthage.
Yep.
But a surprise attack on Carthage's capital city in Spain? It was a ridiculous idea. Even if
Understandably so.
a 7-day forced march past the Carthaginian armies to New Carthage. Once you get there, you'd only have a couple weeks to take the city before the Carthaginians arrived to kick your ass. Sieges of cities that fortified usually took months, if not years. So, Scipio, how are you going to pull this off?
Good question.
Well, first of all, to make sure the surprise plan stayed hidden, Scipio kept it a total secret, even from his own men. Where are we going, Skippy? I'm not telling you. Is it Disneyland? I'm not telling you. I think that means we're going to Disneyland. This secrecy
Those
kept the
fucking
Carthaginians
faces.
from preemptively reinforcing the city. As a result, New Carthage was left under garrisoned because the Carthaginians believed it to be kind of naturally impenetrable. It was surrounded on three sides by a lagoon and only accessible via a narrow isthmus. What's an isthmus, you ask? Maybe read a book. All right, Scipio, you made it to New Carthage.
Oh wow, he actually made it undetected.
10 days march from coming and kicking your ass. Just what were you thinking? Well, Scipio had learned something crucial. Every afternoon, the tides made the lagoon around New Carthage briefly shallow enough to cross. So, he ordered a large diversionary attack on the main city gates, distracting the city's defenders. Then, a small infiltration force traversed the lagoon, climbed the unguarded northern walls, and entered the city.
Brilliant.
Ambushed the guards and opened the city gates to the rest of Scipio's army. And just like that, New Carthage had fallen. In a single day, Scipio had
In a
taken
day?
Carthage's capital city in
That's
Spain,
wild.
and he made it look easy. With it, he seized much of Carthage's war supplies, several silver mines near the city, and various powerful Iberian tribes even joined his side. And now he was in a great position to take on the other Carthaginian armies in Spain. Wow, Skippy, you're amazing. Don't call me that. How'd you know the lagoon would get shallow? It's almost like you speak to the gods.
He paid attention.
No, I told him. All the local farmers know about the lagoon. Yes, that's it. I speak to the gods.
No. No, he's just observant, or he got important
allowing
sources.
his men to think he was divinely inspired. Roman writers
I
also
suppose I
tell
can
us
kinda
another
help.
of Scipio's traits. He was apparently quite merciful in victory, and often protected the inhabitants of captured cities. Spencer! What are you doing? Well, I was just about to murder this family. Hey, bad Spencer! No! Can I at least kill the dad? No! What about the... No! Oh, you're mean! The Carthaginian generals in the region must have been shocked.
It's not necessarily a bad idea.
City. There was now a Terminator in Spain, and he was coming.
Oh yeah.
In 208 BC, he made a move on Hasdrubal, hoping to defeat him before the other Carthaginian armies could come and link up.
Fair enough. It's a good good plan. Yeah.
Hasdrubal did the sensible thing and climbed a big hill for safety. Hey!
High ground.
Get down here! I want to kill you. Fat chance, Vin Diesel! Well, he doesn't have to be rude. So what's the plan then, Scipio? This time, we march straight up and at him. Right?
No.
Right, Scipio? Billy? No. Scipio once again displayed a distinctly not Roman approach to fighting, when instead of marching straight up and at him, Scipio feigned a frontal skirmish, only to pull off a surprise uphill envelopment. Not an easy thing to do, but Scipio
not
trained his
really.
army to pull off maneuvers that typical Roman armies couldn't. After the battle,
Wow.
the defeated Hasdrubal fled Spain, hoping to link up with his brother Hannibal in Italy. And
How are you going to do that from that part?
As Scipio was
From that
dominating in Spain,
route?
Hannibal's struggles in southern Italy continued. He was convinced that if he just received ample supplies and reinforcements, he could reverse his fortunes and get back to kicking Rome's ass. But for
Step
the
1,
remainder
get
of the
reinforcements.
war,
Step
he
2,
would suffer a frustrating
Step
lack
3,
of
profit.
support from the Carthaginian Senate. After
Okay.
Hannibal had sent his brother Mago to Carthage, where he famously poured out golden rings taken from fallen Roman knights. He told the Senate that with reinforcements, Hannibal could finish the job. But a growing faction in the Senate, possibly jealous of Hannibal's rising influence, opposed sending any help. In the end, a large number
Really?
of the reinforcements gathered for Hannibal now ended up being diverted to stop Scipio in Spain.
Oh.
Just as he had hoped, Scipio's campaign in Spain was actively harming Hannibal in Italy. However,
True.
those reinforcements meant that
Did
when
one of you
Scipio made
fart?
a move on the remaining Carthaginian armies in Spain, they now likely outnumbered him. With the odds heavily stacked against him,
Scipio's got to be real smart about this.
to win this battle. This time we're
It
gonna
is
march straight at
possible
them,
to
right?
win against an army bigger than you.
The preceding Battle of Alipa is often considered Scipio's masterpiece because it was positively oozing with deception
Ooh.
and trickery.
How?
First,
Tell me. I
both
really
sides
want to know
spent
this.
several days forming up and facing off without actually fighting. On each day, Scipio placed his strongest Roman legions in the center, with his weaker Iberian allies on the sides. Seeing this, the Carthaginians were like, "This guy's an idiot. We've seen his plan. His strongest troops are going to be in the center. So let's form all of our battle plans based on this information. I'm sure he won't change anything at the last minute." Then, when the day of battle came,
About
Scipio
that.
woke up the Carthaginians with an early morning attack, causing them to rush out of camp without breakfast. When the Carthaginians lined up with their strongest troops in the center to meet Scipio's, they were stunned to find that Scipio had completely reversed his order. The weaker Carthaginian sides now found Scipio's strongest bearing down on them. Then, in an extremely impressive maneuver, the well-trained Roman wings even stretched out during their approach, hitting the
Wow.
Carthaginians from the sides. The Carthaginian center could have turned to help, but Scipio had ordered his center to approach so slowly that Carthage's center could do nothing but just stand and wait.
Oh.
In this way, the outnumbered Scipio had cleverly controlled events so that the bulk of the strongest
Damn.
Carthaginian troops couldn't even fight during the battle. He had completely removed them from the equation.
That's a solid
The
plan.
incredible Scipio had inflicted a monumental defeat on a much larger enemy force. And the Battle of
Oh.
Alipa was the final nail in the
Oh,
coffin for Carthaginian
ratioed. Oh my
the
god.
tribespeople continued to side with the Romans, and the remaining Carthaginians retreated to the coast and eventually
Romans
fled
got
the
Spain then.
peninsula. And would you look at that? In just a few years, the incredible young Scipio had turned Spain completely red.
Yup.
The Carthaginians must have been stunned.
Yup.
His Spanish campaign had almost been as impressive as Hannibal's campaign in Italy.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, see if any of this sounds familiar. In Spain, Scipio had used the environment of the battlefield to his advantage.
Just like Hannibal.
He staged ambushes by concealed troops. He treated
Hannibal
local
did it too.
tribespeople well, earning their friendship. He even once forced his enemy to come out and fight him without breakfast. Each and every one of these tactics were possibly
Mirrored
borrowed from a
Hannibal's.
certain one-eyed general.
Mm-hmm.
In all the battles Scipio had fought against Hannibal, it seemed he may have been taking notes.
Hey, Scipio! What? Stop stealing my tactics! I'm 700 miles away. I can't hear you. What did you say?
What?
What?
Better yet, Scipio's achievement in taking
Alright,
a
that's funny.
fortified city, plus his understanding of the overall strategy, has led some historians to argue he wasn't just as good as Hannibal.
It was better.
Scipio may actually have been better. This young man, who many in Rome had doubted.
If he's
had
capable of
shown
creating his own
himself
original
in
plans?
his
Yeah.
sweat,
Oh,
the
wow.
flip up.
Wow.
Mere years ago, it looked like Rome had no chance of even surviving
Actual
the
bleeps, huh?
war. But now, the momentum of war was shifting astonishingly fast. And for Hannibal in Italy, things continued to head south. Before Scipio had even gone to Spain, the Romans had placed Capua, Hannibal's largest city in Italy, under a dangerous siege.
Ooh.
And in order to rescue it, Hannibal needed to take drastic action. Fast. Man, everything's falling apart. Fine, I'll do it. Do what? Yeah, you've convinced me. I'll march on Rome. Hannibal, that conversation was 5 years
It's a little late for
It's
that.
too late. No one's trying to convince you to march on Rome.
I said I'll do it!
Quit nagging me! Ugh. Hannibal finally marched on Rome, hoping it might draw the Romans away from Capua. The Romans saw Hannibal approaching their city, and they freaked the hell out. Hannibal is said to have closely approached the city walls, inspecting the defenses, as the Romans inside quivered in their togas. However, Hannibal probably knew he had no chance of taking the city. The whole thing was a feint, and Hannibal soon left. The Romans famously coined the phrase, Hannibal is at the gates, to describe a moment of crisis or severe desperation. But for
Nice.
accuracy's sake, the phrase should probably be, Hannibal is at the gates. But don't worry, it's just a feint to draw the Romans away from Capua. And it didn't even work, because the Romans stayed at Capua, and the Capuans misunderstood and thought Hannibal had abandoned them. And so,
Ruh-roh.
they surrendered the city.
Mm-hmm.
But apparently that's not as catchy. Despite a few successes, including an ambush in 208 BC, where Hannibal managed to kill both consuls in one go,
Oh.
Hannibal was slowly but steadily losing
His
grip
ground.
on southern Italy. Even Hasdrubal, who had fled Spain to join Hannibal, never reached his brother. He made his own dramatic crossing of the Alps, just as Hannibal had done.
But
unlike Hannibal, the second Hasdrubal arrived in Italy, he was immediately pulverized. The Romans then took his head and threw it over the walls into his brother's camp. Hannibal was becoming extremely isolated. After his impressive conquest of Spain,
here's
Scipio
where
returned
it
to
starts to
Rome a
fall.
hero. And when the election came for next year's consuls, despite not meeting the typical requirements, Scipio won in a landslide. But the question now
Understandably
was,
so.
what would he do next? All right, what's your plan then, Scipio? You're gonna go fight Hannibal now, right? Get this, Fabius. No.
mine's
Scipio's
collectively
plan
exploding.
remained the same as before. Don't attack the monster directly. Attack his base of support, which now happened to be Carthage itself.
Oh,
That's right,
he's gonna plan an
Scipio
attack on
would
Carthage?
invade Africa. However,
Ooh.
Scipio understood that any invasion of Africa would stand a much better chance if he could secure an alliance with one of the African tribes. Throughout the war, Carthage's far superior Numidian cavalry, which came from this part of Africa, had played a critical role in winning battles. Numidia was divided between two rival kings. In the east, the king Syphax had sympathized with Rome for much of the war, and so at some point, Scipio visited Syphax to ratify a treaty. It just so happened, however, that the Carthaginian general Hasdrubal Gisco, whom Scipio had fought in Spain, also arrived at the exact same time. And so Syphax invited both Scipio and Gisco for a meal. The two men fought for Syphax's alliance, and by Roman accounts, Scipio was positively charming. Come on, Syphax, stick with us Romans. We'll build a naked statue of you. Very enticing. If you join our side, Syphax, we'll give you a 2% discount on figs. You like figs, don't you? Not really. Hey, Syphax, check this out. Wow! Hey, Syphax, check this out. Did he just defecate? I believe he did. Well, Scipio, you clearly are the most charming man in the Mediterranean. My
Yep,
alliance
charming
is...
influence.
Syphax, I'll let you marry my extremely hot daughter. Yours! Humana, humana! Unable to compete with
Damn.
Syphax's libido, Scipio instead made contact with Syphax's rival, the other Numidian king, Massinissa, who was a longtime ally of Carthage.
But
Scipio told Massinissa, if you join the Romans, I'll help you defeat Syphax and become the ultimate Numidian king. And so
solid
Team Rome.
method.
Good job, Skippy. With a Numidian alliance,
Well, alright then.
Scipio prepared for his invasion of Africa. He raised a volunteer force that included many of the disgraced survivors from Cannae, and he set sail.
Interesting.
Well, Terry, any news from Italy? Has Hannibal won the war yet?
No. About that.
Here's Skippy!
Wow.
The Roman landing
Wow.
sent a clear message to the Carthaginians. You don't invade us. No. We invade you.
Ignore him.
First time in the war, the Carthaginian homeland was under threat, and the Carthaginians needed to defeat Scipio at all costs. They gathered a huge army led by Hasdrubal Gisco with allied Numidians led by Syphax, and they ordered them to get Scipio the hell off their continent. Sources say at this point, Scipio was severely outnumbered. Scipio?
But
The army's huge. There's no way we can beat off
But-
these men. How are we gonna beat off all these men? Vigorously. And while maintaining maintaining eye contact. As always, Scipio had a plan to deal with the larger enemy force. It just so happened that Syphax was offering to try and broker peace between the Romans and the Carthaginians. And Scipio smelled an opportunity. He sent a Roman
Such
envoy to
as?
Syphax's camp. And when they got there, Syphax was like, "Hey guys, welcome to the enemy camp. Just before we begin negotiations, a small safety demonstration. As you can see, our huts are made of grass and reeds. Very flammable. If there was even a single spark, this whole place would become a raging inferno, and all my men would burn alive." Very interesting. The Roman troops then reported back to Scipio about the Numidian camp, its construction, and most importantly, its flammability. Then, the following night, as the sun was setting over the beautiful African plains, and the Carthaginians got all comfy in their beds, they began to gently dream of Carthaginian figs and child sacrifice. Good night, Carthaginians. Good night, Syphax and Gisco. Good evening, Scipio. In the night, shadowy Roman figures approached the Numidian camp. As the Numidians lay in their beds, Scipio executed his plan.
Set it ablaze.
The camp erupted into flames. With
Damn.
the flammable wooden huts, the fires spread terrifyingly fast. Men were burned in their beds. Those who awoke in a panic, believing the fire to have been some kind of terrible accident, rushed to the exits without their weapons and armor. Those who saw the fire from the Carthaginian camp also rushed out unarmed. And when they got there, there he was, Scipio, the Romans, and their steel.
Ooh, slow-mo from Oversimplified. Damn.
The terrified
Oh my god, that was amazing.
and with heavy casualties, Hasdrubal and Syphax fled the scene of the disaster. Scipio followed this incredible success with another victory against the pair at the Battle of the Great Plains. After that, Massinissa chased his rival Syphax into
Heck
his kingdom,
yeah.
where Syphax was captured. Massinissa was now the ultimate Numidian king. He
Yup.
entered Syphax's capital city. He seized Syphax's palace. He even married Syphax's wife. And when Scipio got mad at him for marrying a Carthaginian girl, he then poisoned his wife. Boys will be boys.
Wow.
Having defeated
Wow.
the Carthaginian army
Siggy.
in Africa, almost nothing
No, come here.
stood between Scipio and Carthage. And the Carthaginians
Sit.
were freaking out.
Sit down.
What do we do?
Good
What do we
boy.
do? There's only one thing left to do.
Oh.
Recall him.
Uh-oh.
Well, Hannibal, you've been here in Italy for 16 years. This
Damn.
is practically your home. You're basically Italian. Yes, Gerald.
I don't know about
and I had
that.
such a lovely time. I ate spaghetti, did this with my hands. I've committed my whole life to this campaign. And once Rome has fallen, it'll all have been worth it. Hannibal, you have to return to Carthage. Your Italian campaign has been for nothing. Your whole life has been a waste. No!
Oh, no.
Imagine being Hannibal in this moment. You left Carthage when you were 9. You probably barely even recognize your own homeland. The kingdom he had built in Spain with his father? Gone. And now his Italian campaign, his vengeance. Was it really all for nothing? But that was that. Carthage was under threat, and Hannibal had to protect his home city. As he left Italy, in Rome, there was celebration, but also
Understandably so.
trepidation. Now, Scipio would have to face Hannibal in Africa, where Hannibal would have home advantage. While Hannibal was on his way, the Carthaginians stalled for time and approached Scipio for peace talks. Hey, look, we never meant to start an all-out 2-decade-long war. but
Sure.
we did. No, that was Hannibal. He's to blame for all of this. Well, all right then. Sign this peace treaty. Okay, let me just get my signature right on there. He's here. Yes! Oh, look who's here, you bald prick! You're so dead now, Skippy.
Is he?
Don't call me that!
Oh, he mad. He mad, bro.
Proposed peace, only to then go back on it. The normally merciful Scipio was enraged. He began refusing to accept town surrender, and instead began burning everything to the ground, selling everyone into slavery. Hannibal, he's burning our towns. Go stop him. Guys, he's obviously trying to lure me out there to fight on those flat plains, where his Numidian cavalry will give him the advantage. It's a trick.
Yep.
Well, it's working. Go and fight him. It's obviously a trap, and we're falling for it. Go and fight him. Hannibal set out to meet Scipio in the western plains.
Oh boy.
And here came
This is not gonna end
Scipio's
well.
final test. Finally, the teacher would face the student, the two greatest generals of all time, in one last, decisive battle.
Yep.
Would Hannibal's genius still shine through? Or would Scipio prove that he had surpassed the master? Before battle, the two great generals rode out from their camps and met in person for the first time. Hannibal, I'm a huge fan. I thought you'd have more hair, and I thought you'd have more eyes. Touché. They then had a conversation, which I'll paraphrase. Hannibal said, "At the start of this war, I had great fortune in Italy. But look at me now, a sad old man who, like other sad old men, failed to conquer Rome. Your fortune can change rapidly, Scipio. You should consider negotiating a peace rather than risking it all in one last fight against me." Very eloquently put. Scipio then replied,
You! Negotiate? Negotiate what? I took Spain. I'm about to burn your pathetic city to the ground. What could you offer me in negotiations? I already have it all! Ah!
Seriously though, Hannibal, I am such a big fan. And so, it was settled. The two great generals would face off one last
Yep,
time
it's
in
a brawl.
the epic Battle of Zama.
Zama.
Scipio gave his men, consisting of many survivors from Cannae, a pre-battle speech, telling them not only would they gain redemption, but they could become masters of the world. Hannibal told his men probably nothing, because most of them didn't even speak the same language. As the two armies lined up for battle,
Oh boy.
something interesting became clear.
Huh?
Hannibal had more infantry and hoped to use them to brute strength the Romans. But Scipio had the nimble Numidian cavalry and hoped to pull off an envelopment. It was a complete role reversal of Cannae. As the battle began, Hannibal made his first move.
Ooh.
He sent his 80 war elephants to smash through
80?
weakened
Damn, that's a lot.
Scipio had the perfect response. He had altered his formation to create passages between the Roman maniples. His light troops stepped aside at the right moment, revealing the gaps ahead of the charging elephants. Elephants, if given the choice between a suicide charge into spears or a nice clean escape, will probably choose the escape. And that's what happened. Some elephants were so frightened from the noise that they even turned and smashed back into the Carthaginian cavalry, which the Roman cavalry then engaged. Your move, Hannibal.
Oh, Hannibal is not looking good for you.
He knew that he was fighting superior Numidian cavalry on open plains. So when his weaker cavalry ended up being routed from the battlefield, he probably wasn't surprised and hoped the Roman cavalry would be lured as far from the battlefield as possible because his infantry needed time to do a clever little job. Hannibal had the numerical advantage, and he had positioned his army in 3 lines. The weaker troops were at the front, while his best men, the army that had been with him in Italy, were in the rear.
Okay.
As the Romans smashed into the weaker front lines, they managed to cut through them, but suffered losses and exhaustion in doing so. The same with Hannibal's second line, so that by the time the Romans reached Hannibal's superior third line, the two sides may have now been about equal in number. But the exhausted Romans had just fought an entire battle to get there, while the remaining Carthaginians were fresh and ready to go. Hannibal was still a genius. And this is where the final race began.
Oh yeah, this is where the real final battle is.
Before the Roman cavalry returned from their pursuit, who would be quicker? The Carthaginian infantry or the Roman cavalry? The answer: the cavalry. They had called off their pursuit just in time to turn around and hit Hannibal from the rear. And that was the deciding move. As the sandwiched Carthaginians were hacked to pieces, Hannibal knew he had lost, and he escaped the battlefield. It was a battle that some historians say was well fought on both sides.
Oh yeah,
Both
absolutely.
showed their genius, but fortune fell in the favor of Scipio. With just a few thousand Roman casualties compared to 40,000 Carthaginians, Scipio had won.
That's pretty much the entire army.
Hannibal advised the Carthaginian Senate that it was time to surrender.
Damn.
17 years of
Even
war
he knows.
finally The terms Rome placed on Carthage were harsh. They lost territory and were prohibited from starting any more wars with anyone without Rome's explicit permission.
Oof.
Carthage basically became a weak Roman client state. And what of these two military geniuses? Well, Scipio returned to Rome triumphant. For his victory in Africa,
Understandable.
he was given the title Scipio Africanus. He had delivered Rome from an existential threat, and so, from here on out, he was primed to dominate Roman politics. He was even offered to become consul for life, but he
Wow.
refused.
Oh, interesting.
Politics being what it is, however, jealousy eventually grew. Scipio and his family ended up battling accusations of corruption, and Scipio, possibly becoming tired of Roman politics, retired to a nice country house by the coast. Hannibal
Fair.
also took a leading role in Carthaginian politics after the war, but again, due to jealousy, factionalism, and a possibility of arrest by the Romans, he eventually entered exile. He spent the remainder of his years out east, even advising enemies of Rome. Rome's hatred of Hannibal endured, and they never stopped hoping to someday capture the monster. One story is
Did
told
they?
of how when a much older Hannibal was chilling in the city of Ephesus, a Roman delegation was sent to the city, and in that delegation was Scipio Africanus. The two men met for the second time, and they seem to have gotten along quite well. Scipio asked Hannibal who he thought the three greatest generals of all time were. Hannibal placed Alexander the Great in number 1, Pyrrhus of Epirus in number 2, and in third place, himself.
Huh.
Scipio then asked, and what if you had defeated me at Zama? Well, Scipio, then I would have been the greatest general of all time. Please, call me Skippy.
Oh my god.
Around 183 BC, Hannibal, now in his 60s, came under threat of Roman capture. After a long life, he chose to take some poison.
Oh.
According to Livy, his last words, "Let us now relieve the Romans of the anxiety they have so long experienced, since they think it tries their patience too much to wait for an old man's death." Wow, Hannibal, what a dignified end. Gross. And there you have it. The Second Punic War.
Well then.
Finally done. It took 17 years to end the war, and on a personal note, making these videos has also taken 17 years off my life. Carthage began to recover from the war shockingly fast, however, and anxieties over Carthage would remain in Rome. In particular, one senator would begin calling for one last crusade against Carthage to end the threat once and for all.
Ooh, what?
He famously began to end all of his speeches
Oh.
with one singular phrase, one of the most
Cato
famous
the Elder.
phrases
I've heard of
in
him.
Roman history.
Fago delenda est. Carthage must be destroyed. Ooh. Oh, a third Punic War coming eventually. Damn. How many Punic Wars were there? Were there 3? I think there were 3. I think. Question mark? Well, that was the Second Punic War. Fascinating stuff. Seriously though, I never learned about this stuff, so all this information was pretty much new to me. Like again, I knew of Hannibal, but I didn't really know much about him or his endeavors and his campaigns and stuff like that. Although now I do. Hang on, let me fix the camera. See, admittedly, I didn't know much, so therefore I don't think I was able to provide too much analysis or commentary on, likely because I didn't know that much. And while I do certainly love history, there are plenty of aspects that I feel like I can't necessarily educate or expand on too much. There are some history topics that I can, and definitely with a lot of science topics as well, but lots of history topics, especially ones that I don't know about, I usually can't expand on, so that's probably why not as much commentary for some of these like Punic War episodes. I know that I was able to for a couple of other like oversimplified type videos. Not as much the Russian Revolution, but I do think I was able to do a little bit with Prohibition. I simply didn't know too much about the Punic Wars, but that is a fascinating end. The fact that, you know, both like the top generals of both sides essentially never even died in that battle. They died much later in life, but the respect that they had for each other was kind of incredible if you think about it. Like, both of them kind of came together in different ways, but both of them both of them certainly had their strengths and weaknesses. And Hannibal probably undoubtedly would have been seen as one of the greatest military commanders, if not the greatest military commander of all time, if he'd been able to beat Scipio. Except he didn't. Scipio essentially turned Hannibal's tactics on its head. And through a little bit of luck as well, especially at the end, Scipio was able to essentially win the battle with the classic encircling technique, which has been used in a lot of conflicts, especially during the really, dude, especially between the 16 and 1900s and stuff like that. The encircling technique still worked even 2 millennia later. 2 millennia? Wait, get close enough. Very fascinating stuff. Seriously, thank you so much, Oversimplified, for providing all of this, for doing all this research, all this work, this animation, the storytelling, the jokes. There's so much work that goes into videos like these. I don't think I could ever do stuff like this, animation aside. It's just insane. I don't even think I could come close. I have ideas for a video series that I am planning on making related to forensics and failures in forensics specifically. But could it be anything as creative and as complex and extensive as these videos? Hell to the no. No, not a chance. This would be pushing my skill set. So, Oversimplified, I commend you on the work that you have done, that you are able to do, even if it's not very frequently. We all still very much appreciate the work that you put into making these videos about all different kinds of history that most people probably don't even learn about in school, whatever country they're from, you know? So, I appreciate it. I know a lot of other people do, and I found this to be incredibly fascinating. There's so much I did not know about Hannibal. Well, so much I didn't know about the Punic Wars in general. But, he's covered the first Punic War, he's covered the second, so I guess there's now the third. Again, I don't remember how many Punic Wars are there. Are there 3, 4? I don't exactly remember. It kind of makes you wonder, what's he going to cover next after the Punic Wars? If he's going to cover anything. Because you never know. You do some of these kinds of videos long enough and it's just I'm starting to get tired, or I do them less frequently. So it sounds like he is committed to doing the third Punic War. Now, how many parts it's going to be, I'm not entirely sure. If it's the first, we're probably going to get 2 videos in about a year's time, or maybe longer. If it's the second, or if it's even longer, we're going to have to wait a while before we get videos, which, it is what it is. But these videos definitely take a lot of time, and we appreciate the time that it takes. We appreciate the effort that he puts into creating these videos with such fascinating history. I mean, you get something like these big old wars and the Punic Wars and Prohibition and stuff like that. And then you get these random ones like the Pig War and the War of the Bucket and the War of the Emus, or whatever it was called. The Three Kingdoms. That you get all these little random events too. It's okay, all right. But yeah, I don't really have anything else that I could possibly say, except thank you all for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed this. Sorry I wasn't able to provide too much commentary. I do apologize. I do try and provide commentary, but sometimes it's just very difficult to. But in any case, I very much enjoyed watching these, learning about history. These are awesome. Oversimplified has great content. So thank you all for watching, and as usual, until the next video, guys, check you laters.